Welcome back to the life of Vespasian. Welcome back from your holiday from Caesar, Ray. I had to do the last one without you with Mark Hyden. That was a fun chat.
Thank you. Well, good. I'm glad you had a good time.
Did you have a good holiday?
Yeah, because I mean, what do you want to hear? No, I missed you. I missed you. I don't know what to say. Go ahead. You got stuff to talk about.
I do. And look, we got a couple of shows to record that I'm going to have a lot of fun doing. I don't know if anyone else is going to enjoy listening to them, but yeah, you're kind of used to that if you've been listening to this show over the years. This is going to be a rabbit hole episodes.
Yeah.
And I wish I'd done the prep for this before I interviewed Mark Hyden, because this is about the Jews. So the last time this is episode 5. On episode 3, the one before the Mark interview, we had Mucianus arriving in Rome in advance of Vespasian to consolidate the power, set the table for the new Flavian dynasty. Antonius Primus, once hailed as the savior of Rome, gets kicked to the curb and exiled. 18-year-old Domitian parties like a rock star. And what now we need to talk about the Jews.
Yeah.
And I love talking about the Jews. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this, but I made a little movie 4 or 5 years ago called Marketing the Messiah. And I did talk a little bit about the Jews in it. Not as much as I would have liked to. Don't really want to talk about what the Jews are doing in Gaza right now, because that's depressing. And history will not look kindly upon them. I think this is I did see Yuval Harari say recently that this is the worst thing that's ever happened to Judaism, this current thing, because the ramifications of this towards Jews is going to be large and long. Anywho, we're going to talk a lot about the Jews because we're getting to the next round of the First Jewish-Roman War.
Mm-hmm.
Tacitus begins book 5 of his histories by talking about how Titus resumed the attack on the Jews after things had settled down in Rome. So people, just for new listeners, welcome. Strap in. Guy at Kung Fu said to me the other day, "Hey, I just stumbled across your podcast. I'm going to start listening." I was like,
"Oh God.
Be it on your own head. I take no responsibility for anything that might happen to you as a result of that."
What you do with that information, that's on you. I'm the conduit. Go ahead.
I said, which one? Which one? He goes, I stumbled across one of your Facebook pages. I said, which one? He goes, it's got about 40 episodes. I go, that's just futuristic. That's my AI one. That's pretty safe. Yeah, if you get into the history stuff, and that's intense.
Yeah.
It's intense.
Yeah.
So Vespasian was leading the attack on Judea, and then he took a break to go and throw his hat in the ring to become emperor. And now that he is officially emperor, although still in Alexandria, which is in Egypt, he sends his son Titus, his oldest son Titus, not Domitian, not party boy, but the grown up one, Titus, back to Rome. Back to Judea to finish the job. They sort of took a break for better part of a year, and the Jews are like, "Hey, we won!" And they're like,
"But did you?"
So fast. Yeah,
it's called a lull for a reason. Go ahead.
Tacitus says Titus was selected by his father to complete the subjugation of Judea. They had already been subjugated by our old friend Pompey the Magnificent.
Did he?
100 years earlier.
Right.
But then the Jews got uppity, and they got to go back in and remind them who the fuck they're dealing with. The Jews are like, "Hey, we've got a Messiah," and they've like, "Yeah, we've got a testudio."
Do you?
Yeah. Let's put your Messiah to the test. Our God is the greatest God. Yeah.
Is he? Here's my sword. Yeah. Well, I just wanted to say that and this will probably be at the end of the second. It depends on how we do this. At the end of the second episode that we're going to record tonight, the Jews did have some reasons to be miffed at the Romans. Yes, they've got their foot on their throat, but still, I mean, you keep fucking with someone, and they're eventually going to fight back. But we'll get into that. But yeah, this is what Tacitus going. Okay, so and tell me if I've got this right. Pretty much all of Judea has been occupied by the Romans, except for Jerusalem. And so then, and I just think this is funny. I think Tacitus goes, so before this magnificent city is destroyed, let's stop here and let's go back and let's look at the history of the Jews. And a lot of the stuff that he says, I think would have went really well in a Nuremberg rally in the 1930s. So let's see what he thinks of the Jews.
The Jews. The Jew hammer.
That was quite. It's the recordings of Tacitus that I've got stored in the library. Yeah. So he starts off by talking about how Titus put together a huge army. He found in Judea 3 legions, the 5th, the 10th, and the 15th, all old troops of Vespasian's. Then he added the 12th from Syria, some men belonging to the 18th and 3rd from Alexandria. They were accompanied by 20 cohorts of allied troops and 8 squadrons of cavalry from the 2 kings Agrippa and Sarebus, the auxiliary forces of King Antiochus, and a strong contingent of Arabs who he says hated the Jews with the usual hatred of neighbors. Do you hate your neighbors, Ray? Yeah.
More than I should. Yes.
By neighbors, I mean Mexicans. They're your neighbors, really. Like, as a country. Canadians and Mexicans. Yeah.
I shouldn't answer.
And lastly, by many persons brought from the capital and from Italy, by private hopes of securing the yet unengaged affections of the prince.
Yeah.
Then he goes on to give a variety of theories on the history of the Jews and where they came from, which I found absolutely fascinating. In theory, this should be like 2 minutes of the episode.
Right.
Instead, I went so down the fucking rabbit hole with this.
Yeah. I kept writing, he said what? He wrote what? Oh my God. I mean, but yeah. So let's cover this.
Yeah, it's like, and I've been trying to talk to anyone who'll listen.
Am I right? What again? What again? I dare you. I double dare you, motherfucker. Say what one more goddamn time. Black Dawn. He's bald. Does he look like a bitch? What?
I love that scene. Sorry, go ahead.
So let me start by reading Tacitus, and then we'll break it apart and drill down into what the fuck is going on here.
Right.
As I'm about to relate the last days of a famous city, it seems appropriate to throw some light on its origin. Some say, here's Donald Trump here. Some people say that the Jews were fugitives from the island of Crete, who settled on the nearest coast of Africa about the time when Saturn was driven from his throne by the power of Jupiter. Evidence of this is sought in the name. There is a famous mountain in Crete called Ida. The neighboring tribe, the Idii, came to be called the Judai by a barbarous lengthening of the national name. Others assert that in the reign of Isis, the overflowing population of Egypt, led by Hierosolomus and Judas, discharged itself into the neighboring countries. So Hierosolomus is a Greek backformation of Jerusalem. So he's like, there was a Greek guy called Jerusalem who founded a city called Jerusalem, and he was with a guy called Judas, and that's why they're the Jews. And Mr. Like Jerusalem went and founded his own city. That was one of the theories.
Right.
And they came from a mountain called Ida because they're the Judai. The barbarous lengthening of the national name. How dare you lengthen your national name? That's such a barbaric thing to do, according to Tacitus.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Many again say that they were a race of Ethiopian origin, who in the time of King Cephas were driven by fear and hatred of their neighbours to seek a new dwelling place. Others describe them as an Assyrian horde who, not having sufficient territory, took possession of part of Egypt and founded cities of their own in what is called the Hebrew country, lying on the borders of Syria. Others, again, assign a very distinguished origin to the Jews, alleging that they were the Ptolemy, a nation celebrated in the poems of Homer, who called the city which they founded Hierosolima, after their own name.
Right.
So what he's referring to here is a section in the Iliad where Homer's talking about Bellerophon, the greatest hero and slayer of monsters in the days before Heracles, who is sent on a series of impossible quests. He has to kill the Chimera, he has to battle the Amazons, and he has to fight the Ptolemy. By the way, Bellerophon was also the guy who tamed the winged horse Pegasus with the help of Athena's magic bridle, and then pissed off the gods by trying to fly Pegasus into Mount Olympus.
Yeah,
the Ptolemy, he mentions as a fierce mountain tribe living somewhere in southern Anatolia, but that's it. That's all he says about the Ptolemy, Homer. Just they were tough motherfuckers. So tough that going fighting them was the impossible task, which Bellerophon pulls off, but it was sort of legendary that he was able to pull it off. And again, like a guy called Mr. Jerusalem coming from Egypt, Tacitus's sources, because he's not saying he believes this necessarily, this is just one of the stories that he's heard.
Yeah.
People just, reverse named it as onomastic. They said, well, there was a tribe called Ptolemy, Jerusalem, Hierosolima, sounds like that, so maybe they're those people, right?
Right, connection.
Yeah, it's easy to do that. We do that today. We go, well, that sounds like this, so those two things must be connected, right? And it's not always the case. And it's not the case here either. He goes on to say, most writers, however, agree in stating that once a disease which horribly disfigured the body broke out over Egypt, that King Bocchorus, seeking a remedy, consulted the oracle of Haman and was bidden to cleanse his realm and to convey into some foreign land this race detested by the gods.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Question. Okay, so thank you. There's a plague. It's making the bodies disfigured. The oracle says to the king, the gods so hate these people, the Jews, that if you get rid of them, the plague might go away. I'm going to get crazy here for a second. Let's just say that I'm the lawyer for the Jews, which is, anyway, did the Jews cause the plague? Did the gods cause the plague? I mean, who laid the plague down? And why is getting rid of the Jews from this land of Egypt going to suddenly make the plague go away? There's some discrepancies here, Your Honor. And it's putting the Jews in a bad light. And as far as I can tell, they haven't done anything bad yet. Or is it just because of who they are?
Yeah, they're just despised by the gods, so the gods hit them with the plague.
That was so casual.
Get
him the fuck out of here. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
King Bocchorus was a minor pharaoh of the 24th dynasty in Egypt. He's often known as Bakenranef, around about 720 BCE. And known to the Greeks as Bocchorus. Diodorus remembers him as being a lawgiver, clever in judgments. Oh. But basically, he's saying, they had leprosy, and the Egyptians kicked him out of the country, and they had to go somewhere. So, in the Bible, the Old Testament, we talk about Moses leading the people out of Egypt, and like they were given their freedom and they got the fuck out of Egypt after being in slavery there.
Right.
This version that Tacitus had heard, he said most writers agree that they had leprosy and they were kicked out. Yeah. Tacitus continues, the people who had been collected after diligent search, finding themselves left in a desert, sat for the most part in a stupor of grief till one of the exiles, Moses by name, warned them not to look for any relief from God or man, forsaken as they were of both, but to trust to themselves, taking for their heaven-sent leader that man who should first help them to be quit of their present misery. They agreed, and in utter ignorance began to advance at random. Nothing, however, distressed them so much as the scarcity of water, and they had sunk ready to perish in all directions over the plain, when a herd of wild asses was seen to retire from their pasture to a rock shaded by trees. Moses followed them, and guided by the appearance of a grassy spot, discovered an abundant spring of water. This furnished relief. After a continuous journey for 6 days, on the 7th day, they possessed themselves of a country, from which they expelled the inhabitants, and in which they founded a city and a temple. So not 40 years in the wilderness.
Right.
It was 7 days, and on the 7th day they rested.
So technically
Moses,
6.
wishing to secure for the future his authority over the nation, gave them a novel form of worship, opposed to all that is practiced by other men. Things sacred with us, with them have no sanctity, while they allow what with us is forbidden. In their holy place they have consecrated an image of an animal, by whose guidance they found deliverance from their long and thirsty wanderings. They slay the ram, seemingly in derision of Hammon, and they sacrifice the ox because the Egyptians worship it as Apis. They abstain from swine's flesh in consideration of what they suffered when they were infected by the leprosy to which this animal is liable. By their frequent fasts, they still bear witness to the long hunger of former days, and the Jewish bread, made without leaven, is retained as a memorial of their hurried seizure of corn. We are told that the rest of the 7th day was adopted because this day brought with it a termination of their toils. After a while, the charm of indolence beguiled them into giving up the 7th year also to inaction. But others say that it is an observance in honour of Saturn, either from the primitive elements of their faith having been transmitted from the Idii, who are said to have shared the flight of that god and to have founded the race, or from the circumstance that of the 7 stars which rule the destinies of men, Saturn moves in the highest orbit and with the mightiest power, and that many of the heavenly bodies complete their revolutions and courses in multiples of 7.
Sounds like Louis Farrakhan going to town with some numbers. Let me know when we can stop and break some of that down, because I did find a lot of this skewered and interesting. Okay, so let's see here. So the first thing, excuse me, sorry. So the first thing is that supposedly Moses changes a lot of the Jewish religious practices. The only reason for doing that, well, 2 reasons. 1, I guess he wants to be remembered. He wants to put his stamp on the Jewish people. 2, and I can't put it this any more simply, to be a cunt. So everything that the Jews hold dear, everybody else finds abhorrent. Everything that everybody else finds normal or whatever, the Jews find abhorrent. So it's literally just being the opposite, just to be an opposite. When you kill the ram, obviously you're upsetting the Egyptians, because to the Egyptians, to their religion, the ram was a divine symbol. The ram wasn't just an animal. It represented the God himself. And killing the ram would be akin to, sacrilege, religious sacrilege. Again, when it comes to slaying the ox, they're doing that just to piss off the Egyptians, because they worship Apis, if I'm saying that right, a revered bull deity. So right out the gate, and I know that Tacitus is just repeating what he's heard, but this from here on out, most of it it's got a very negative slant to it. It's like they're just doing it because they're base, they're mean, they're disgusting, they're perverse. And there's one thing that he kind of likes about them. We'll get to that a little later, but everything is just a negative. It's just coming from a negative point of view. They went to a place, they kicked those people out, they took it out, they took it over and they made it their own. Hello, we're talking about the Romans. The Romans have made a business of taking people's shit, and so is the Parthians and so is everybody else, because that's what you do. But I just am fascinated by the blatant negative spin on what could be maybe just facts and history for the stuff that is accurate.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I think he's writing all of this to justify what the Romans are doing to the Jews in Jerusalem, right?
Absolutely. It's propaganda. Yeah.
Yeah. Secondly, I don't think he thinks them kicking out the natural inhabitants of this region is a bad thing. He just mentions that's what they did. I don't think he's passing judgment on that. But definitely, this whole section, he's portraying the Jews as dirty barbarians. I was talking a friend of mine, well, like one of Fox's friends' parents was over yesterday, and he said, can you give me the short version of where anti-Semitism comes from? And I said, well, first of all, I can't give a short version of anything. Secondly, yes, I can. And I was saying, like, the Romans, I was talking about the first Jewish-Roman war, and I'm like, but it wasn't about anti-Semitism. Yeah, the Romans saw the Jews as barbarians, but the Romans saw everyone as barbarians. Anyone that wasn't Roman was a barbarian to certain degrees. The Greeks had some sort of customs that they admired, but mostly they were barbarians.
Mm-hmm.
The Romans didn't give a fuck what you believed. They thought you were barbarians. That was just the way. As long as you shut up, paid your taxes, kept your nose clean, did what you were told, like basically your parenting style, right? I don't give a fuck.
Pretty much.
Who your real father is. Work. As long as when you're in my house, you do what you're told.
Toe the line, sister.
Yeah.
Toe the line. Yeah.
And anyone who caused trouble, we're going to get bitch slapped back into position.
Right.
The Romans they just want an efficient kingdom, like any kingdom, right? They just shut up, do what you're told,
Absolutely.
Don't cause trouble. Like the Chinese with the Uyghurs, everyone's like, oh, they're trying to they're just like, stop being terrorists. And if we're going to have to put you in re-education camps to re-educate you because you obviously think you can overthrow us, and you need re-education, because you're not going to overthrow us, right?
Right.
Stop causing trouble. But his view of their religious practices and the reason for their religious practices is interesting. So, and there are some elements of fact in this, I think. It's interesting. When I threw all this stuff into GPT, it said, well, no, they don't sacrifice the ox just to piss off the Egyptians. They do it for theological reasons and for a covenant and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, wait, that's just post hoc justification. That's what they would have said later on, but that's probably not why they did it originally. There are got to be roots to these things. And it was like, yeah, you're right. So you drill down on it.
Right.
So, first of all, he talks about the worship of the Sabbath, the seventh day, because they had this journey and that they stopped. The Old Testament says they worship the Sabbath because God created the world in 7 days, and that's why they rest on the seventh day. But again, that's a post hoc justification.
Yes.
The way that a lot of these things develop, of course, is that people are doing things for generations, and then somebody goes, why do we do this again? And they go, oh, fuck. Anyone know? No, we don't know. Let's write a story to explain why we do this, right? To shut these fuckers up. So you come up with a story that says, well, God said, or God did, and that's why we do it. Is that good enough? Right. Just shut the fuck up.
Because you can't question that. Once I say God said, that's it. That's the end of the discussion.
Over. Discussion over. Right. The Sabbath, the 7 day cycle comes from the Zoroastrians. So again, for people who don't remember their Jewish history, they were conquered at one point by the Babylonians, and a bunch of their elite were taken to Babylon. They're in exile for a century or so. And when they were freed by Cyrus the Messiah, as they thought he was, Cyrus the Great, they were allowed to go back and rebuild the temple, etc., which he helped them do. But they took with them a lot of Zoroastrian ideas, religious ideas that had sort of filtered their way into Judaism. So monotheism is one of those. The Jews were not monotheistic originally. They believed that there were lots and lots of gods. In fact, you read the Old Testament, there's no evidence of any monotheistic belief in the Old Testament. The Jews believed that there were lots of gods. They believed that their God, Adonai, Yahweh, Jehovah, was the best God and had their back and was protecting them. But there's plenty of talk in the Old Testament about all these other gods that other people worship and that, Yahweh is better than. Right. But the Zoroastrians were monotheists, and when the Jews were in Babylon, they started to get their head around this idea of, well, there is only one God. So the post-exile literature is where you start to see more talk of monotheism. And a lot of the stuff that ends up being written in the Old Testament is written post-exile, but they pretend that it's pre-exile, but it's not. Historians today believe it's written post-exile.
They predate it. Gotcha.
So the Babylonians had a 7-day week, 7-day cycle that the Jews adopted. Like in our recent Renaissance show, we were talking about Michelangelo, and his name comes from the Archangel Michael, and we talked about how the archangels, the Jews borrowed archangels from the Zoroastrians as well. It was a Zoroastrian idea. Like Christianity, Judaism was syncretism. The Jews, like the Christians, picked up bits and pieces of different religions, mishmashed it all together into a new thing and said, well, this is now this thing. It's like Americans borrowing pizza from the Italians and then...
new and improved. Yeah.
Making it bigger and cheesier and less healthy and then going, hey, we invented pizza.
Pineapple on there. Yeah.
I thought Australians started that, but anyway.
I have no idea.
Called it a Hawaiian. 7-day week is Mesopotamian in origin. The Babylonians organized time in sevens that was linked to phases of the moon and planetary deities. So the Jews didn't invent it. They inherited it. They adapted it. There is some evidence of a Sabbath thing in the pre-exilic part of the Old Testament. One line from Amos 8:5, which is sort of 8th century BCE, pre-exile. He has merchants complaining, when will the new moon be over so that we may sell grain, and the Sabbath so that we may offer wheat for sale? It doesn't look like it's a holy day, though, like it's just a day off work they may have had, rather than be some sort of a, super, super holy day. So he is, getting back to Tacitus, there's some stuff in this which is, like, even sacrificing the ox. There's this line in the Old Testament where Moses finds them building a golden calf and worshipping a golden calf, and he goes, whoa, hey, no, we don't do that anymore. Yeah. In fact, we've got this ark that we need to build, and then we're going to sacrifice a bull, and God's going to eat the bull because he's hungry, and blah. So that does reek of, our people have inherited these religious ideas from the time they were in Egypt, and we need to beat that out of them now and tell them, no, we don't do that anymore. We're going to do this other thing. And in order to demonstrate that we don't worship the bull, we're going to, which is the same as killing worship of the bull, effectively, right?
Wait, hold on. You said before you coughed, you said we're not going to worship the bull, and to prove it, we're going to kill the bull. Is that what you said?
Yeah, we're going to kill the bull.
Okay.
Sorry.
Just want to make sure. No, that's fine. Just want to make sure.
The mute button.
Yeah.
Was that a sync?
We're both coughing.
I remember in our Alexander series, we talked about Apollo and the snake god that Apollo replaced in Greek worship. There's this, the Pythia, the python. So there was this oracle of Pythia, and they worshipped this giant snake god, the Pythia. And then Apollo, according to Greek theological tradition, Apollo fought the python god, killed the python god, and then the oracle became the oracle of Apollo rather than the oracle of Pythia, because Apollo had bested the snake god. He had to kill the snake god in order to take the snake god's fucking oracle power, shrine, whatever. So when one god replaces another god in ancient stories, they had to fight and kill that god, or in this case, the Jews killed the bull to prove that their god was stronger than the bull god, the ox god.
Right.
So I think he's like, the stories that he's relating, there's probably some truth there, but I mean, in terms of eating the swine's flesh because of leprosy, I don't know about that. Yeah. But the Sabbath day, they definitely, I think, is pretty good evidence that they adopted that from Babylon, from the Zoroastrians.
And this is probably post as well, but there was I think I looked up where it said one of the many one of the many reasons they take the seventh day off is because just to prove once again to themselves and to the world that they're not slaves, because slaves can't decide when they take a day off. So we're taking this day off just to show that we're no longer beholden or controlled by anybody else. And that, they were just, it's like their claim of independence. Of course, they're going to lose this to Rome, but that's down the road. But it's basically like, hey, what slaves do you know get to call their own time off? So again, it's almost like sticking it to everybody else. We claim this. So again, it's probably after the fact, but it got caught up in there somewhere because that's what ChatGPT told me.
Don't tell me what to do.
That's what they were saying.
Friggin' immigrants.
He goes on. This worship, however introduced, is upheld by its antiquity. All their other customs, which are at once perverse and disgusting, owe their strength to their very badness. The most degraded out of other races, scorning their national beliefs, brought to them their contributions and presents. This augmented the wealth of the Jews, as also did the fact that among themselves they are inflexibly honest and ever ready to show compassion, though they regard the rest of mankind with all the hatred of enemies. They sit apart at meals, they sleep apart, and though as a nation they are singularly prone to lust, they abstain from intercourse with foreign women. Among themselves nothing is unlawful. Circumcision was adopted by them as a mark of difference from other men. Those who come over to their religion adopt the practice and have this lesson first instilled into them to despise all gods, to disown their country, and set at naught parents, children, and brethren.
Right. I'm impressed. I so want to be different than you. I want to stand out from you, that I'm willing to cut the tip off of my penis. That's how committed I am. So don't fuck with me. Don't do that. And if you come over to our side, we get to do it to you, and you have to disown your family and your old religion. This is a zero-sum game. We're not playing here. You're either Jew or you're not. Decide.
I made a joke about that in the documentary. Like, Christianity was Judaism light. You could get all the benefits, but you didn't have to cut the end off your dick. It was like, go on.
That's a good selling point. I would keep listening. I got to be honest. I'd keep listening. Yeah.
What if I told you didn't have to cut off the end of your knob? Go on.
You don't see me walking out, do you? Go ahead. Keep talking.
So we've talked about circumcision on our shows before, but it's always fascinating to me. Like it's fucking weird. Like mutilating your genitals.
Okay. I'm hardcore.
Yeah, for your God
For
is
God.
or chopping off your kid, your young son, or cutting off your young girl's labia, which happens in certain cultures. Like it's really weird, fucked up shit. The earliest depictions of circumcision come from Egypt, dated sort of 2400 BCE at the tomb of Ankh-Mahor.
Nope.
The tomb of Ankh-Mahor. Ankh-Mahor was a great guy. Like Ankh-Mahor loved cutting the tips off somebody's dick. Loved
he
it.
woke up with a spring in his step. He would hum in the morning.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
This tomb is known as makes it even better, the Mastaba tomb of Ankh-Mahor, commonly known as the doctor's tomb, not because he was a doctor, but because it contains scenes of circumcision. And you can't masturbate if you're being circumcised, not at the same time. You can't.
No.
It's not recommended.
You got to be
not recommended.
Quit stabbing my hand. Damn it. That's my good hand. Oh, anyway. Sorry. Focus.
Yeah. The tomb was discovered in 1897 by Victor Lorette and was opened to the public in May 2016. So if you want to go and see the earliest evidence of circumcision, that's where you go. And it's in Saqqara in Egypt.
I'm good, but thank you.
So there's this talk about the medical reasons behind it, what it was all about. Some Egyptologists believed that it was partly hygienic in a hot, sandy climate. Removing the foreskin reduced infections and parasites building up under there. But it was also tied to ritual purity. The foreskin was seen as unclean, so if you wanted to be fit for temple service or elite status, you would cut it off to go, listen, no diseases. I'm clean as, man. It's
now,
like getting an AIDS test these days before you go to an orgy. Back then, you would whip it out and go, whoa, clean. Before you got entry, there'd be a security guard. Flip it out. Yeah. Let's have a look. What do you got? What are you packing?
Yeah.
Let's see.
Now, I don't know if you know this, but most newborns aren't really sure which career path they're going to go down yet. So do I have to, I do have to make this decision now as far as my penis? Okay. Yeah, sure. I'll take 2.
The Jews, of course, frame it as a covenant with the Lord. The Lord was like, listen, let's be honest. How do I know that you really love me?
Do you really?
The only way I really know that you love me is if you're willing to cut the end off the tip off your dick. Cut that piece.
Yeah.
But didn't you put it there? Yes, I did. Yes, when I designed it.
Yeah.
I designed.
I get the irony.
It was a design flaw. Looking back on it now, I wish I could.
Yeah.
I wish I could take that one back, but I can't. What's done is done. Wait, aren't you all powerful? Look, yes.
Look,
you don't understand. There are fixed points in time, right?
Right.
And
fixed events. Don't cross the streams. Just don't cross the streams.
It's a fixed point.
But it's fixed. This is a fixed point in time. Fixed points can be rewritten. No, they can't. Of course they can't. Who told you that?
Every male penis is a fixed point in time.
Yeah.
What did you get about that?
Yeah. So, look, and it's embarrassing to me, quite frankly. I don't know. I was really, look, I'll be honest, fucking drunk that day. The day I designed the foreskin, I was like, I designed the dick first,
too much.
And then I was like,
too much.
Oh, I'm just going to cover that up. I don't like the tip of it. I'm going to cover it up. I'll get back to it later. Then I forgot. I was so drunk, I forgot. I wasn't sure what I'm doing here.
Well, I was thinking about the Cobra with the hood, so I put like way too much up here, and it's like, no, that's not right. Oh, fuck me. Okay, so
and it
do what you gotta do.
Slides out and slides back. It's like,
do.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
Later on, Jewish apologists like Philo of Alexandria in the 1st century CE, sort of contemporary of Paul and maybe Jesus, he did argue that circumcision prevented disease when he was debating Greeks about it. He's like, no, it makes total sense why we do that.
Yeah.
And Josephus makes similar points when he's defending it. So by the time of Tacitus, Jews were offering medical rationales for why they did it. Modern studies do show that it can reduce certain infections, urinary tract infections, but, if you keep it clean and you teach your son how to keep it clean, just clean it.
Yeah.
But it may have been originally a health-related thing in Egypt.
Right. But it's just one of those things that stands out. That's why they stand out from us, yada, yada, yada. So again, it's just something for Tacitus to mark down. See,
barbarians.
Odd. Yeah.
Continuing with Tacitus. Still they provide for the increase of their numbers. It is a crime among them to kill any newly born infant. They hold that the souls of all who perish in battle or by the hands of the executioner are immortal, hence a passion for propagating their race and a contempt for death. They are wont to bury rather than to burn their dead, following in this the Egyptian custom. They bestow the same care on the dead, and they hold the same belief about the lower world. So, of course, the crime to kill a newly born infant, we've talked about this on this show over the years. The one I remember most is when Augustus made Julia take her infant son and leave him exposed on a rock to die because she was a dirty hoe. And he was like, no, I'm not allowing some bastard child into our bloodline. You got to leave him out to die. And it was family planning. If in Rome,
right,
they might have had the rhythm method, and if you came in ladies vajayjay, you might ask her to put some lemon juice up there or something to kill the sperm. But really, it was like, they were fucking a lot. There were babies being born left, right, and center. And then they were like, oh, well, I didn't want that one. Let's just leave it out to die, hang it out to die. Like, we don't need it.
Right. Well, it was definitely a Greco-Roman practice. Like you said, one, it could be someone had an affair. Two, maybe the family is too big already and they can't economically afford it, which sounds cruel, but those are the Romans are pretty tough people. It could be physically deformed. And again, this is something that sets the Jews apart. They would not do that. They saw life as sacred. It would not be exposed. They would do the best they could with it. And so you have the difference at the beginning of life, and then you have the difference at the end of life. They bury the body. They don't burn it. Again, the Romans burn the body. The Greeks burn the body. And because, as every good Roman knows, you burn the body to release the soul, to purify the soul. Whereas the Jews supposedly got the idea of burying bodies from the Egyptians, which the Romans already distrusted the Egyptians. But to the Jewish people, the body was sacred. It was the vessel that God created to hold the soul, and to return it to the earth was a sign of respect and humility. Again, what we're talking about here is just different worldview, different religious practices, different points of view. But again, this is just one of the things that Tacitus can tick off. And I'm not saying he's doing it in a mean way, but he's just going, see, just different from us. And as we all know, as history shows us, different is hardly ever good.
Yeah, and well, we'll break those things down one at a time. So, yeah, the family planning with the infant exposure thing. I was talking to Chrissy about this yesterday, and I was like, imagine being
it's too late.
the mother.
Right?
Can we just leave Fox out? Being the mother, you're carrying this baby to term. Yeah. They probably did have early pregnancy terminations, but they would have been risky as they were right up until like late 20th century. Backyard abortions, that kind of thing. But we also know that childbirth was very risky for most of human history.
Oh, yeah.
So this poor woman, I don't know what percentage of women died in childbirth back then, but I remember it happened to Caesar's daughter, who was married to Pompey. It didn't matter how rich or powerful you were, you could still die in childbirth. So, but you carry this thing, give birth to it, survive, and then they go, nah, we don't want this one. Sorry, that's 9 months gone. Yeah, sorry. Good luck.
Right.
Congratulations. You survived it, but we're getting rid of it anyway.
Maybe next time. Exactly.
Yeah. But that was just the reality of Greco-Roman civilization. He says the souls of all who perish in battle or by the hands of the executioner are immortal. The Jews in the biblical period had very, very thin, lightweight ideas of the afterlife.
Right.
Christianity really took that and ran with it, but the Jews didn't really early on have much of an idea. They had this idea of Sheol as a shadowy underworld, but there wasn't really a well-developed theology about what happened to you after you died, which was the same across all the Greco-Roman religions. There was like this vague idea that you might go to somewhere and do something, but no one really, they were honest. Look, we don't really fucking know.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe
no
you survive, maybe you don't. No, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
By the time Tacitus was writing, the Jews had been influenced by Persian and Hellenistic and Egyptian ideas of resurrection and immortality. Resurrection appeared obviously in the stories of Osiris in Egyptian mythology, theology. There were some stories of that in Greek and Roman gods. So the Jews had taken on a little bit of that. There was some ideas roaming around that you might come back, might be reborn, might be immortal. But it wasn't very well fleshed out. The Christians, one of the things that was interesting about this too is we know Tacitus was familiar with the Christians because he mentions them briefly in one of his writings. And the Christians, of course, by the time he's writing, aren't really seen by most Romans as a different thing. They're just a Jewish sect. They're a Jewish cult.
Right, a break off. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, not even a complete break off. They're still Jewish. They're just a particular sect of Judaism.
Gotcha.
Who did have stronger views on immortality and resurrection and all that kind of stuff. So he might be just lumping that in with things that Jews believe because he's heard that there are some Jews that believe that.
Right.
But again, he sees them all as crazy fanatics, which makes them politically dangerous because they don't fear dying. So they're like kamikaze pilots in World War II, right?
Exactly.
Dangerous.
Yeah. What do they do? Kill them? They don't care.
And we do see in the First Jewish-Roman War, we've talked about this, there are the assassin orders that are running around killing people in Judaism. They had these order of assassins, which again they got from the Persians. So, there are elements of that are turning up in Tacitus as well. In terms of burying their dead, we know that the Romans cremated dead bodies a lot. You talked about releasing the soul. We had when we did the death of Julius Caesar, Augustus supposedly saw Jesus' soul rise up into the heavens and become a god, and that's why Augustus was the son of a god, Divi Filius. Again, I talked about that in my documentary. But again, how much that came from Egypt. Whether or not they adopted that from Egypt, possibly. And the Egyptians did that because it was a resurrection thing. They believed, that's why they buried the pharaohs with slaves and jewelry and weapons, because they believe you were going to need that in the afterlife. So I think the Jews had integrated a lot of Egyptian beliefs around that. Of course, they have their own post hoc justification for it in their theology, but they probably inherited a lot of those ideas from the Egyptians. He also talks about their belief in the underworld, which they'd taken from the Egyptians, and that's probably true too. I mean, they had diverged from the Egyptian ideas over time, but as they made them their own. But again, it looks to me historically that they did take a lot of these ideas from the Egyptians and integrate them into their own. So he's not wrong in some of these connections.
Mm-hmm.
They're not as simplistic as he makes them. They'd sort of diverged over the time as they integrated them in their own thing. But he's right in saying they've borrowed bits and pieces from the Egyptians.
Everybody does. And just to let everybody know, this is a wrinkle into history that most people don't know about. When Christianity was still young, they hired this PR firm called Barry and Stan, something like that. And they're like, they told him, look, we're still small, but we want to go viral. And Barry and Stan thought about it. They did some lines of coke and they said, wait a minute. So no one's really got anything developed about after death, the afterlife. That's kind of just all vague and no one's really nailed it down right. Because here's what we're going to do. We're going to make your entire fucking religion about what happens after you die. No one can check us and we can force everybody to do what they want while they're living to get to heaven and their reward after they die. The Christians, fucking beautiful. They signed the check and they were off to the races. Most people don't know that, but if you look it up, I think you'll find that's true.
Jesus.
Back to Tacitus. Quite different is their faith about things divine. The Egyptians worship many animals and images of monstrous form. The Jews have purely mental conceptions of deity as one in essence. They call those profane who make representations of God in human shape out of perishable materials. They believe that being to be supreme and eternal, neither capable of representation nor of decay. They therefore do not allow any images to stand in their cities, much less in their temples. This flattery is not paid to their kings, nor this honour to our emperors. From the fact, however, that their priests used to chant to the music of flutes and cymbals and to wear garlands of ivy, and that a golden vine was found in the temple, some have thought that they worshipped Father Liber, the conqueror of the East, though their institutions do not by any means harmonise with the theory. For Liber established a festive and cheerful worship, while the Jewish religion is tasteless and mean.
Don't hide it. Just come right out and tell us what you think. Yeah. So, and I remember we talked about this, I don't know how many years ago. Was it Augustus? Or maybe one of his younger family members, when they was becoming a man, age 15 or 16, they removed the bulla praetexta to show that you're going from a boy to a man. And that happens on March 17th during the festival of Father Liber, or the Free Father. And I just remember that because, and again, a lot of people say, not a lot of people, some people in the Western world say we should go back to some kind of gesture, because you've got 27-year-olds acting like 12 years old. But you can look at a Roman youth and go, I can tell right away if you're a man or a boy and how to treat you and what to expect of you, just because if you're wearing this thing or not, because they and they made a big deal out of it. I remember talking about that, and I just thought that was kind of cool. About there's a sacred ceremony to say, okay, you're no longer a boy, you're a fucking man, act like it, and there's certain things that are expected of you. And again, that's festive, that's positive, that's very different from the way the Jews are being presented, at least in this part of this subject, by Tacitus.
Well, I find this section fascinating because Father Liber was the Roman name for Dionysus or Bacchus, the god of wine, ecstasy, liberation. Liber, liberation is the root of liberation. Was associated with ivy, wine, cymbals, flutes, all those sorts of things, the vine.
Party.
Now, there was a golden vine in the temple. Josephus mentions it, a massive golden vine that Herod placed over the entrance to the table. There were grapes the size of a man. For Jews, it was supposedly a symbol of Israel as God's vineyard, but for Romans, that obviously looked like it was Bacchus they were referring to.
Right.
Of course, again, this is where the Christian element of it is interesting, because Christians did integrate elements of Dionysus worship. Again, no, I didn't talk about this in the documentary. Got cut for time. But eat this bread, it is my body, drink this wine, it is my blood, part of Christianity. We've talked about this before. The best which is not Jewish, like that's to Jews that would have been fucked up.
Yeah.
It makes total sense, though, when you think about it in terms of mystery religions. If you have a god like Osiris, which is the god of bread, of the grain, if you're eating bread, you are eating the body of the grain god. Bacchus or Dionysus is the god of the grape. If you're drinking wine, you are drinking, the blood of the god of the vine. So again, it makes total sense. So it looks to me like that idea was sort of the syncretization of pagan religions worshipping these agricultural deities that seeped into Christianity, early Christianity at some point. They came up with their own justification for it. Well, no, the reason we do that is because Jesus told us to do it.
Yeah. Trust me.
Yeah, that makes total sense. But it's a post hoc thing. Again, like the evidence is pretty clear particularly when you read the Gospel of Mark, that Christianity started as a mystery religion that was worshipped in secret in caves and little darkened rooms and cellars and places like that, where they were just sort of pulling together bits and pieces of different cults that were popular in Rome and around the Greco-Roman society at the time. A little bit of Judaism, a little bit of mystery cults, etc., etc. And then over time, it kind of became its own thing, and then they did this post hoc justification for it, keeping in mind that Mark was written post the destruction of the temple, so around about the time that we're talking about here. And Christianity had been around for a generation or two since then, and he's like going, well, the reason we do this is because of X, Y, and Z. Although the story, the first appearance of the Eucharist is in the writings of Paul, which is probably 10 or 15 years before Mark is even written. And Paul said they were given to him. He had heard about it from someone else, and he talks about it like everyone understood it already. So this tradition had been around for a little while before that. Just finishing off with this section here of Tacitus. Eastward, the country is bounded by Arabia. To the south lies Egypt, on the west are Phoenicia and the Mediterranean. Northward, it commands an extensive prospect over Syria. The inhabitants are healthy and able to bear fatigue. Rain is uncommon, but the soil is fertile. Its products resemble our own. They have, besides, the balsam tree and the palm. The palm groves are tall and graceful. The balsam is a shrub. Each branch, as it fills with sap, may be pierced with a fragment of stone or pottery. If steel is employed, the veins shrink up. The sap is used by physicians. Libanus is the principal mountain and has, strange to say, amidst these burning heats, a summit shaded with trees and never deserted by its snows. The same range supplies and sends forth the stream of the Jordan. This river does not discharge itself into the sea, but flows entire through two lakes and is lost in the third. This is a lake of vast circumference. It resembles the sea, but is more nauseous in taste. It breeds pestilence among those who live nearby its noisome odour. It cannot be moved by the wind, and it affords no home either to fish or water birds. These strange waters support what is thrown upon them, as on a solid surface, and all persons, whether they can swim or no, are equally buoyed up by the waves.
Nice.
So he's talking about...
I don't know if the Dead Sea. No, I don't know if you know this, but the Jewish mafia actually tried to hide bodies in the Dead Sea, and they wouldn't sink. So it's like, we got to come up with another plan. But it's 34% salinity, which is 10 times greater than the ocean. That's a lot of fucking salt and other materials as well.
Well, we'll talk more about the Dead Sea in the next episode, but I just wanted to talk about the balsam resin that he mentions here. It was considered one of the most valuable medicinals in the Roman world. It was used for antiseptic and anti-inflammatory applications. It was used for perfumes. It was possibly used as an ingredient in embalming. Snake bites, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, skin infections.
Pliny the Elder, in his Natural History, writes about Judean balsam, calling it one of the rarest and most jealously guarded plants in the world. So there you go. I didn't know that about balsam.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool stuff.
Well, look, we've got more about the Jews and the Dead Sea coming up in the next episode, Ray. So I hope people found that interesting. I found it fascinating, his view on the Jews. We'll have some more of that next time. And in the next episode, we're also going to be talking about bitumen.
Not bitching, but
we're going to be bitching about bitumen. Why the Dead Sea throws up bitumen, which I found fascinating. But anyway, we'll talk about that next time.